Hey everybody, this is Jesse Bugarin with the Dream Team Realty Group brokered by eXp Realty. So, diving right into this is going to be one of the very first of a video series on how-tos. This one touching base on the buyer's representation packet. Now, being that this is one of the very first videos we're making, it's also because this is typically one of the first forms that people are going to start working with. So we're also going to be touching base on Zip Forms, how to log in and how to use it. Keep in mind, Zip Forms is a free platform with our NER dues. Here at eXp Realty, this is where we get our forms done, and from there we upload them into our system, which is SkySlope, and then DigiSign Assign. But I'll be touching base on that on the different video, just because there are some people who obviously don't need that. For example, I'm a transfer agent, do not need to know as far as a lot of this, just the second portion, which would be to upload into the other system, and for the signatures, which is preferred by eXp Realty. So if you have any questions on any of this, please feel free to contact me. My information is at the beginning and at the end of every video. And just keep in mind, this is going to go quite into detail. So this is going to be for anyone, especially starting out, and anyone who's like, you know what, I need some more understanding on some of these packets. And the other thing is also, this is going to be showing you what disclosures I require for my team, and that's different from the mandatory disclosures and some of the other forms that eXp asks for. I include theirs, but I have some additional forms which I do like in my videos, and again, which are going to be required for anyone in my team. Again, the idea here is to limit any liability and help you grow as an agent. Keep in mind that this video is intended as a guide. Process and forms vary from state to state and even sometimes from city to city. So it is recommended that you check with your local broker if you are insured on some of these items. And if you have any questions, definitely check with them. So what we're going to start, obviously, is we're here starting off at a web browser. I'm here on a Mac, so I'm using Safari. We're going to go here and we're going to start off by going into Texas Real Estate. Texas Real estate.com. Something to keep in mind, guys, it does not matter if it's all caps, no caps. The only time it matters is in passwords, so don't freak out about that. And we're going to go ahead and press enter. Now that we're here in texasrealestate.com, you're going to see this blue button that says Zip Forms. As soon as you click it, it's going to take you to the Zip Forms, which is what we use. This is what you pay for with your NER dues, and it's free to use for us. And this is where you're going to find all your forms and so on. Now, this one, I'm already logged in. So I want to show y'all actually two other quick ways that you can do it. So let's say if you were going into, you could also go to zipformsplus.com. But the thing here is if you go into zipformsplus.com, ooh, I'm signed in. Let me see if I can sign out. So I can show you guys. The thing here is if you go to zipformsplus.com, there we go, and you were to click that same username and password, which Texas Real Estate will also prompt you to use, it's not going to work here. It'll work on the Texas Real Estate one following that link, but it won't work here. If you end up here, because I find myself going through it a lot, you have to click this blue button, and then it'll open up this pop-up blocker, which you may need to have off, or it may not come up and it might not take you. But then you would click continue. It takes you to the next area, which would be like this. Let me show you in 1 second. There we go. It's going to come up and it's going to ask me to sign in. Actually, it's signed in. Well, it'll look very much like the other screen. It's just going to say username and password, just like everything else, guys. Very simple. So you just sign in. That's really it. The other way you can do it is if you're on Sabre. So you go to your Connect MLS. You're going to go to members, because we're a member. You're going to connect into, obviously you type in your password and email. And then now mine looks a little different because I'm still running the older. I like the older version just because I've been using it for a while. But if you go down to the right hand side here, you're going to see these links. You're going to see tools, resources, links. Now, I also highly recommend that you mess with these guys. RPR should be a really good friend to you. This is a way to access the Bexar County Courthouse. I'll touch base on another video with this stuff later. But these are things that a lot of people go into other links and they're all right here. And then finally, now to get into TexasRealEstate.com, you would go here and you would hit Texas Association of Realtors. And this will take you over to Texas Real Estate. And again, we're back at the Zip Forms. So again, this is a couple of different ways of doing it so you can find it. If you've just gotten on, just go to texasrealestate.com and sign in. If you're obviously already working from MLS, this is a great way to do it from here. So I'm going to exit out of this because today, again, we're focusing on the forms. Now, from here, as you can see, I've already got 3 transactions going on. I actually have a lot more than this, but we had a bit of an issue and they ended up having to reset my account. I had to back this up, and I haven't brought on the files in just yet. But yours, once you've set up the account and everything, you'll have your information in their company's information here, and this will actually be blank. So the first thing you need to do is actually go into here where it says new, and you're going to click, and then you're going to choose whether you're doing a listing or a new purchase. In this case, we're doing a new purchase. So we're going to click there, and then I'm going to name this buyer test. And then now when it's a buyer, I put the buyer's name. Usually I'll put the last name or the first name. It just, whatever is easier for you. So for me, like, I have Christina, her full name, and then I have Rachel and Robert Wells here. Now, the way that I work it is, if it's a buyer you're starting to work with, you obviously still don't have or typically you wouldn't have a property already set in mind or in contract. So you would just write the buyer's name, excuse me. But once we went into contract on a property that we found, in that case, I would come back, edit the details, and you would rename this to the property address like this. Now this is a listing. On the listing, you have the property address. So right from the get-go, you start writing the property address. So if I were to do, for example, 419, and it starts to auto-populate or try to bring up what property, and you would find it and you would choose it. Now, again, we're going to name this buyer test because it is a buyer. We technically have not we're just going to start doing the paperwork to even start searching. So we're going to go here and we're going to hit residential because this is the type of property we're currently working with. Again, you can choose from there. And then active. You can keep track of your files. Are they currently looking? Are they already under contract? Is it just a brand new person you're kind of keeping an eye on and you had to send them the IABS? Because again, we're supposed to be sending that at first substantial conversation of real estate. And then transaction comments. So transaction. So here, for example, I would just say this is a test. This is really just anything that pertains to the whole file. And going back to that really quick here, again, if you do need to send it and you want them to get them signed, you can send it through here or fill it out and then send it through DigiSign in SkySlope, which is the other program. But again, if you spoke with a buyer and it's just details, that is not a substantial, conversation with them about real estate. You don't need to send them the IABS. It's only if you're going to start giving him advice and so on. I know there's some misconception on that, but let's go ahead and click save here. And there we go. So now that we've saved it and we're here into this portion of it, we're going to see it takes us to a new window. Now, see here on the left side, you see buyer test. So this has already named it. We're in the file. So if we were to go back into the list, now you don't have to do this, but if we go back, it's already created here, the buyer test. You would click on it and it'll prompt you to this. Now, we don't have a property selected, so we've got nothing to fill this out with. Once you do, you come back, and I would recommend coming out and filling this out. And then, or in the contract. If you do it in the contract, usually it'll come out here. But sometimes, again, if you were to write it in here, if it can auto-populate and make it easier, do it. And here to the left-hand side, you can see where it says buyer, lender, and so on and so forth. I'm going to show you what happens when you open it up. For example, here it's going to open it up and you get to write the buyer's information. So we're going to name him, and again, I probably botched how I spelled it. Walker Sky. Sorry guys, I'm a Star Wars fan. So Anakin Skywalker is what I named the first buyer. And then the only thing that I would recommend having in here would be the email. If you want to put the cell phone, go ahead as well. But typically this will auto-populate into the contracts when you have it filled out. So I'm just going to leave the buyer name here and just put save. And once it's saved, if you go to this next tab, you're going to see they're going to start coming out here. And then you would do buyer 1, 2, 3, and so on if there are other ones, sellers, and anything else. I've never done lenders, title companies, or anything in here because I've never had anything that they've needed to be on the paperwork that's from the forms that are on here. So from here, really the main thing you're going to come to is documents. And later on, once you've got everything set up, you'll probably just log in and you're going to go straight to documents most of the time. So this tab. Now from here, we're going to go and where are the forms. So the forms, as you can see, this nice blue tab all the way to your right says all forms. So we're going to go ahead and click. And you're going to see here a large list of forms, or you might see a small list of forms. The reason is because there are different libraries. So there's Texas Real Estate, there's National Association libraries, there's the TREC, and then there's the Board of Realtors from San Antonio or whatever association you're with. So the ideal thing is to click all and go through it. Now I will say, typically the most forms that you're going to use are going to be TREC and the Texas Real Estate. So for example, TREC started the forms, and then Texas Real Estate comes in and they'll take the TREC forms, they'll revise them, and then they'll make them better for us, the realtors, if that makes any sense. So in general, if you can, because there will be duplicates, if there's a form that's for under Texas Real Estate Commission for TREC and under TR, then you want to use preferably the TR. A lot of times they're almost identical, and sometimes they don't. I mean, there's no difference. But for example, in the seller's disclosure, I personally prefer the Texas Realtor Seller Disclosure. I find it easier, and it's almost about the same as far as how thorough, but it's just preferred to use Texas Realtors because it's been designed more for realtors. But anyway, so what you can do here is you can go to all and then go ahead and search. All right, guys. So once we're here too, something to keep in mind is the fact that the forms, sometimes the forms are not abbreviated. So I know we say a lot IABS, right? Now, if I start writing it IABS, we're getting it here, but it's not appearing under Texas Realtors. And you'll have that sometimes where they won't even appear under either one. You have to actually write it out, information about, there we go. And see, now we've got it under Texas Realtors. Now, on the IABS, there's really no difference between these two that I've seen. But again, just out of habit, I try to use Texas Realtors. And if you hover over it, you're going to see that it'll give you the whole name. And this one says buyer tenant, and this says seller landlord. Really not that big of an issue with this form. But anyways, we're going to go ahead and click on it, and it'll add, because that's the first form that you should have signed is the IABS. From there, the next form we're going to go ahead and add is going to be the wire fraud. Wire fraud warning. Now, I know that EXP has their own as well, so I can show you right now how to add a document. That's really over here on the left-hand side, and it's pretty self-explanatory. But for the most part, I just, to make it easier, I'm going to bring this one in, and this is the one I typically use. And the next one is the going to be the general information. Now, this is a form that a lot of realtors don't use, and I'm going to show you why in a sec, why I love this form. This is not a broker required form. It actually was in the previous two brokerages that I was with, but I like the layout and what it explains. So I'm going to go ahead and add this as well. Now, if I were to write general info, obviously it comes out. But as soon as I go to information, like I was mentioning earlier, it changes. That's not it. That's already different. See, it's taken away the one I was looking for. So some of these can't be if it's abbreviated here, it's just going to be one of those things where you'll remember. But here we go. We're going to go ahead and click on here, general info, and then obviously you need the buyer rep agreement. So buyer, and then we'll make it easier. I'm going to select Texas Realtors because I do like that one. And that way you can narrow it down instead of having such a long list. So residential buyer tenant rep agreement. So we're going to go ahead and click that. So these are primarily the 4 forms that you're going to use from here. Actually, there's one more, excuse me. So the other one is the disclosure notice. Let me see here. So this is going to be the disclosure of relationship with residential service company. The residential service company, again, is the home service warranty. That's all. It's also called that. That's what it is. So these are typically 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, the 5 forms that I use. And then I would add, so this is where I'm going to show you where you can add a doc from the outside. I'm going to go ahead and add the documents here. Browse for document, browse for file, and then you would go into here. But in this case, I have it on the desktop under EXP docs. I've got a folder specifically for EXP documents. So there's still some that I'm adding to it, but for example, if I wanted to go ahead and add the ABA disclosure, or if you have the pre-filled out one that you wanted to go ahead and do, you could click here, and then you would go to choose, and then you would go to OK. You would add a description, change the name in case you wanted to change it, and it adds it in here as a PDF. So these are typically the main documents that you need for the buyer's rep agreements. So let's go ahead and touch base one by one. Now, once you've got them all in here, you're going to go in here and you can see that they're each pre-fit. You can go ahead and pre-fill it out. So now that it's been added, you can see here that the ABA is right here, and it's been uploaded as a PDF file. Now from here, you can see that you can obviously choose to look at every single file individually. So we're going to go ahead and choose the first one, which is information about brokerage services. And this one will typically be all blank. Follow the one that has been provided from EXP. Wherever you're from, because again, different areas have different supervisors and so on. So I'm going to go in here, and my stuff, I've done it before, and I've actually had it from a previous brokerage before too. So some of the stuff is automatically coming up from even the old brokerage. But I'm obviously just choosing the ones that I need for this one. That's my current supervisor, which is Rick, and then the emails and the correct license numbers. So let me see here. So for example, all I got to do here now is just click away, and yours will probably be blank, and you'll have to type it in. Let me see here. There we go. And as you can see, my name and email and everything came up. The only thing that I'm having to do on my end is the license number, because I've already got this pre-filled out already. So again, this is the information about brokerage services. One thing I do want to bring up, guys, I have seen some agents who start to highlight away at certain things like, hey, look at this area is just explained. Like when they go over the information about brokerage services, I actually learned that you can't or you shouldn't be going through and pointing specific parts of a document out just because that is also considered apparently practicing law, because that's like telling them focus here instead of maybe focusing somewhere else, and they can come back at you and say something. So really the best practice is just send it for them to review, and if they have any questions, have them ask you. And you can give them an overview of what it is, just don't go specifically like this and specifically here and then not touch base on anything. Or you go over all of it 100%, or you really just don't go over it and let them go over it themselves. That's really just a really good practice for most documents. The next one, of course, is the wire fraud warning. Now, right now, this is huge. This is huge. Think about how many fake emails, messages on your email on social media that people are getting all the time. So here again, really easily, this is the broker's printed name. So you're going to write eXp Realty and then broker associate signature. You are the broker associate. And then here you would choose who it is. So in this case, I'm choosing to do the buyer. And then here, if I clicked once, it auto-populated because I had added him previously. Now, if I go back in and I go another one, now I haven't added a second one. So let's go ahead and call this one Luke. These are brothers, or father and son in this case, who are purchasing. So we would do that. And sometimes from here, it'll help auto-populate somewhere else. So even if you didn't do the first one, if you type it here, we should see it pop up in the rest of the documents. Not all of them. Some of them don't have this feature, but most of them. But again, because of everything that's going on, guys, this is a super important paper document that you need to provide to your clients. And tell them, I always tell my clients, if you have any questions on anything, if anyone asks you for any account number or anything, verify with me first, or verify with title first. That's why it's good for them to keep in touch with title themselves too, not just you be the intermediary between everything, because it just makes things a lot smoother if they can get the information directly from them. Now, EXP does have their own, and again, I'm using Texas Real Estate, the Texas Realtor, form. But again, if you want to use EXPs, you can definitely do that. I just do it because I can fill it out here easier. The next thing is the buyer, the general info and notice to a buyer and seller. Now, this is one that I've seen a lot of people that don't use. At my previous brokerages, they were mandatory, and I personally love it. I don't think EXP is mandatory with this one that I've seen. So here's the thing: annexation, appraisal, brokers, all these things, it literally gives a breakdown of what everything is, and it tells them what they should look out for. So for example, in Elotes here in San Antonio, on the northwest side, when the city annexed a huge portion of it, people freaked out and they were mad at realtors because they're like, well, why didn't you tell us this could happen? Because obviously if the city, the city limits get moved out more, and then suddenly you are not, and now your city limits, your taxes go up like crazy. So many people were mad, and they were even blaming the realtors, like, why didn't you tell us this could happen? Well, a lot of times, if someone did come back, you could say, hey, remember that form I provided, the general information? This is one of those topics it touched on. We can't control what's going to happen or what isn't. Now, in that case, from my understanding, it was overturned. They were able to get that fixed and removed, but that's not always the case, and we don't know what's going to happen because obviously we can't control that. So this is a really, really good form to explain to them on all these things, what they should look out for, if they have any concerns, ask us, because at the end of the day, I know they say there's no stupid questions, and let's be honest, there are some stupid questions, but it's better to ask a stupid question and just get a simple answer versus possibly asking a question that really is a good question and then, it causing an issue later. And again, it touches a lot over everything. Another big thing is school boundaries, guys. School boundaries is a big thing. For example, we just worked on the listing where the buyers were like, oh, this is still, they thought it was Southwest District. And I said, no, this changed from Southwest High School, to Legacy High School. And they were like, wow, well, in that case, then we don't want it. But a lot of people who had just moved in, who wanted to stay in that school zone, they technically weren't able to, but now I've heard that Southwest is allowing them to come in and it's through open enrollment and so on. But there's some districts that don't allow that. There's some districts that say, this is your house, this is where you have to go. So all you got to do in this form here is go here and you just write your buyer. So you write buyer 1, or for example, Anakin and Luke. If they share the last name, I would just write it same Sky Walker. Perfect. If they share the same last name, just write it out like that. Make it easier on yourself. And then from here, every page has it now. On other, I write N/A. I don't like to leave things blank. And in fact, too, there's going to be a form like on the actual 1 to 4 family residential contract where if you're going to write 0, there's a specific way of writing 0 here. If not, it won't stick. And it's so important, and I'll touch base on that later, but it's best not to leave anything blank. Broker's printed name, obviously, eXp Realty. eXp Realty, eXp Realty LLC, they're about the same. That's really not a big issue. And don't forget, you are the broker's associate. That is what we are. So here you would go ahead and write your name. And then we're going to go ahead and go next. And here, of course, you're going to click on buyer/seller. Let me see if it'll come up here. No. So on this one, it's not coming up. Like I said, some of them will do it. For some reason, some forms don't. Skywalker. And then Skywalker. Okay, perfect. So very simple. Now you've got them signing away at this portion where they're going to sign. And again, this is one of those forms that I really do love, and I send it. I know there's some people who get a little frightened sometimes of adding more forms and that it's going to freak out the client, but it's not. Honestly, if you just go over with them, and please go over with them, what you're sending, because that's typically one of the biggest complaints that I've had. And when people switch, the realtor didn't go over with what I was signing and they didn't feel comfortable. Like, think about it. If someone brings you a whole stack of paperwork and say, sign here, 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 and you're just like, oh, well, I can see it, but you've never seen a lot of these terms and don't know what it pertains to, how comfortable are you going to be? So a lot of times, being in this industry for many years, people forget that. And really, that's one of the most important things. You got to remember that everybody is here. You got to treat them pretty much like a new client, even if they've purchased before. But if it's been a number of years, this is a new experience for them, because many things have changed. So from here, we're going to go into the actual residential buyer tenant rep agreement. So we're going to go ahead and click here and open up the form. And again, see, this is what I was talking about. We've got Anakin Skywalker already here. And then we're going to click on the bottom and we're going to add the second person, Luke Skywalker. So now that we've got both of them on here, we would write in. Now, I didn't fill out any of their information. Had I done that over there, this would have been taken. But if not, I would start filling this out. So for example, 12/330. And then look, if it'll, again, a lot of this is going to auto-populate. So random address. Okay, phone number, email, this is where you would write it out. And then this information, except for the address, should be yours. So broker, obviously, eXp Realty, but this phone number should be your phone number. This email should be your email. The fax, well, I mean, that could be your fax if you have one. Just this is so that they mainly get in contact with you. And then now for us, try to see if you don't know what address you have. If you go into your MLS, into the listing service where you see all the homes and everything on there, then on there it should have your broker address somewhere on there. And actually, let me show you real quick. While we're here, we go in here, we're going to sign in. And from here, we're going to go into, where'd you go? So if we were to look up, and even if you were to look up one of your other agents, so in this case, you can look up an agent here. I'm going to type Victorica. He always does that. So Mario, I'm going to use that for you. So there we go. So you would click on the person, for example, Mario. And from here, we would choose, there we go. That is the address we use, because obviously we don't have a brick and mortar for us right now, brick and mortar office. And so this is what the address would be that you would type into here. And in this case, it's already pre-filled out because I've got it, again, tied in with my info on this on here too. That's why it's good to go in and try to fill out as much as your own information as you can, because it'll help save you time. So this, again, this is going over the parties. Who are the parties? It is, the client or clients, and then yourself, and the broker. In this case, don't forget the contracts are between the clients and the brokers. You are a broker associate. You are representing the broker, but the clients are technically the brokers. They're not your clients exactly. And then let me see here. So again, this is by appointment. So in this case, they're saying we are going to be the specific representative for the broker helping this specific client out. And now we go into this area. So really what you've got to focus on is just mainly the yellow areas, but I'll go over it slowly just because you're probably going to have to explain this. You're going to have a buyer who's going to come up and say, what am I signing? Can you go over every section of it? And you've got to. And I've had that. So don't be the agents like, oh, well, I mean, it's mainly just these portions you got to focus. If they're asking for a full rundown, give them a full rundown. So here in definitions, market area. This whole area, what it's talking about is really like what area are you looking for. So obviously we don't want to try to steer, again, steering is bad. We don't want to steer people to a certain area because of a race, ethnicity, religion, any kind of, we shouldn't have to do that. But I have had clients say, you know what, I want to be on the, on this side of town just because my family lives there, and because since they live there, I want to be close by to them. And, I just feel more comfortable because there's stores that I know and stores of my culture nearby that I want to go to, and so on. So what we would do here is we're saying, look, we're not taking you to a certain area. The client is requesting us to take them here. So I would say, for example, if they want to go, if they want to do, for example, the northeast side because of the school district, right? So they say we're going to go ahead and look northeast, San Antonio. And surrounding areas. Just because at the end of the day, we try to get them as close as where they want, but realistically, a lot of times we have to broaden the search more than you just, hey, I want to be in this neighborhood. So I always say and surrounding areas. Now, if they were to say, I specifically want to be in this neighborhood, then I would write specifically. Let's say I know there's a place called El Dorado subdivision, specifically El Dorado subdivision and surrounding areas. I always follow with and surrounding areas. But this is what's saying, hey, this is where surrounding. Sorry, this is where it goes and it explains where you are looking for, literally. Like if they want to stay on the northeast side for X amount of reason, this is where you're going to write it out. That way later they can't say, you know what, no, I felt like Jesse was only taking me here. Well, no, this is what you agreed to because this is what you, the client, was asking for. That's why it's very important. Now, the term, this is when the agreement actually starts on and ends. And that can be different from when you what day this is actually signed. So again, and you can even do these for one day. I mean, there's no limit on how short you can make them. I've had some clients who are like, well, I don't want to be under contract, but I want to look at homes. And if I see that they're kind of iffy, I'm just like, okay, well, let's do this. Let's get this buyer rep agreement. We'll write it for 28 to 48 hours and what you're looking for. And if we find a home, we'll extend it because I did my job. And so at that point, I need to help you to get into contract. Because sometimes there's some clients who feel really iffy on signing a 6-month contract. I mean, at the end of the day, at this point, how many people haven't had bad experiences with cell phone companies, internet providers, and so on with contracts? So they feel the same way. So at this point, I would say, look, we'll start it from today. Typically, we write it out for 6 months. So I'd go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and I would end it March 31st, just like that. So again, this can always be amended. It's easier. Let's say if you've been looking for 5.5 months and this is about to end, come back and instead of having, because as soon as this expires, you need to create and rewrite this whole well, not packet really, because you've got the packet, but this whole agreement versus just doing a 1-page agreement that just says the term, instead of ending March 31st, will now end June 31st, for example. You extend it by a couple months. So that's just something else to keep in mind. Again, brokers' obligations, we have a responsibility to them to do things, but just the same, client has an obligation to listen to us. They need to be able to, like, if we tell them, hey, we need you to be responsive, we sending you emails, look at them. If they're not going to do that, and the homes, are at the end of the day, in this market right now, it's super hot. If you've got a client that you're sending homes to and they're taking days to review it, what's going to happen? They're going to be missing out on homes, and then it's just going to be that way over and over and over again. And you have every right to say, you know what? If you're not going to listen to me, I'm not going to keep wasting my time. And I hate to say it because it's wasting your time on searching homes blindly, trying to set up appointments, having to meet with you, and all these things that nothing's getting done. And so you can cancel under this clause itself. Just like they can cancel if they're like, hey, you know what, Jesse's not responding. He's not getting back to me. I'm having questions. He hasn't been sending homes like he promised. I mean, we have an obligation to them to fulfill what we've promised. And if we're not doing that, they have every right to cancel too. Now, representations, everybody, at the end of the day, you know, we're all signing to the best of our knowledge. We are 100% good. And again, everyone who's signing has to be sober. I know it sounds funny, but that actually has been a thing in the past. So here, really the next thing you've got to fill out is the buyer-tenant representation agreements, yellow box to the right here. And in fact, if you click down on this arrow, it'll automatically set it up for you. So Anakin Skywalker, Luke Skywalker, and Jesse Bugarin of eXp Realty. And this is exactly how you want to write it up. There's a little extra space here, but you want to have the two buyers and your name of the whatever company. So I really do like that. Sometimes if you click on these, even if you've never filled them out before, it'll come up. And then here, name of employer, relocation company. So again, some people are moving due to jobs. And sometimes those jobs will provide a relocation company or some kind of incentive or something else with that who has to be involved. And in this case, this is where you would write that in. It's not very typical, but it has happened. So that's where you would write that in. And in this case, we would leave it blank, or in this case, like I said, there's not any, so we would write NA, not any. Intermediary status, I'm sure this is one of those things that usually sticks with most people's heads. We do intermediary status here at eXp Realty. So again, you have every right to represent both parties. And if you do, again, you've got to be in the middle. You can't, if you're going to be the sole realtor representing the buyer and the seller. That's intermediary without appointments. You can do that, but remember, you need to be unbiased to either party at that point, because at that point, you can't be giving advice one way or the other. Now, if you decide to say, hey, you know what, that seems like too much responsibility, or there's going to be some conflict, refer it out. Find someone you can refer one of the parties to if that's the case. Now, you typically see this more on the listing side because they'll come to you. But if you were to find a for sale by owner, for example, that's where it would come into play here with a buyer. And I've done for sale by owners where they were doing for sale by owner. I brought the client and I did intermediary between them. Or you could also run it as you can run it as a for sale by owner, and you're just representing the buyer. So there's a couple of different ways of doing it. But again, let's say it was a for sale by owner, and the for sale by owner said, you know what, I want to go ahead and I want to have an agent. You know what, I see the benefit in it. I see what you're doing for me. Can I get an agent too? And you want to say, you know what, that's going to be a lot of responsibility. I don't want to take that much liability on. Let's go ahead and set you up with somebody. You refer them to an agent and get a referral from the agent for that referral. I mean, you can definitely do that. So again, going back to the form though, intermediary status, we're going to go ahead and click A. Next thing is competing clients. You know, this can happen. And at the end of the day, you've got to, and I've had this already. I've already had this. It wasn't very common at first, but I've had it where right now there's so little market homes on the market compared to how many buyers that the nice ones, everyone's going after the really nice ones. So if you have two clients in the same price range in the same general area, they're most likely going to run into it, and you've got to go typically with whoever you were representing first, or whoever got there first is how it is. But just be smart about that and explain to them that is a possibility. Confidential information. This is something so important. I've literally had an agent call me and this agreement and everything that is kept confidential and any client details remains confidential, not just when this agreement is broken. This is forever. If they come to you and say, hey, Jesse, you know what, we're selling because this and this happened, I don't want anybody to know. And even if they say I don't want anybody to know, just keep it between you. You still should, because you shouldn't be blabbering your client's information out to the public. So I've had an agent where the deal went south on their end, and they came back and they told me everything wrong with the seller and what could possibly be wrong with the house. And I mean, it was honestly one of the worst things that I've seen an agent do to their clients, just because he said, "Oh, I'm out of the contract," and that is not true, guys. If my understanding is, he ended up getting in trouble for that because the clients ended up finding out that he. I'm sure I wasn't the only person he was blabbering out to. So be careful with that. Please do not release any confidential information. Even if this agreement ends or they terminate, you are still liable. You still have to keep it a secret. You got to keep their information confidential. Now, commissions. So this is the part. This is the money. So right here, typically, and I can't really say typically, what we're negotiating right now is 3%. Again, all commissions are negotiable. Now, being that we're on the buyer side, that typically is paid by the seller. So, but this is just saying, technically speaking, if the seller were to offer 2.5% and you're asking for 3%, yes, you could come back and say, "Hey, we agreed I was going to get paid, that 0.5% more," and you could come back to the buyer and ask that they pay that because that's what they're agreeing to. Now, realistically, don't do that, guys. I mean, why would you burn a bridge for 0.5%? I guarantee you, if you keep them happy, the referrals they'll give you is going to be worth a lot more than 0.5% that you'd probably get off that one deal. So again, just go, and when you're looking for homes, you should not be looking at the commission on what they're offering. Honestly, typically, you should not be looking at it and trying to say, "Oh, I'm going to go with this house or show them this house just because the commission is higher," and that's wrong. That's actually illegal. We shouldn't be doing that. But don't forget, so it's whatever you negotiate, but typically it's I write 3%. That's what I negotiate, and then this is if the client agrees to rent or do anything. If they say, "You know what, I'm not going to rent. I'm not going to buy after all, I choose to rent," or if you're helping a rental. I typically just write, here we go, 50% of 1 month's rents, and then or blank. So this is either or. So in this case, I would leave this blank just because we're not selecting this one. But really, at the end of the day, if it's a rental or if it's commission, it's going to be what's ever offered because, again, we are on the buyer side and it's whatever the seller and the agent are offering. So that's where it would be. Sorry. Now going down, we've got earned and payable. Really, don't forget, we get paid by doing our job. So again, a client can try to contest saying, "Hey, I don't feel like you deserve the commission because you didn't do jack." But if you did your job right, that shouldn't be an issue. And actually, and this is where we're going to get into additional compensation and other stuff. So something I like to type in other is offered commission. Why? Because sometimes you'll go to new builders and they will offer a little something extra, a 0.5% or 1% or even double the commission, 6%, and at the end of the day, this helps say if there's anything being offered, I want it. I'm gonna accept it. Typically, they won't look at it. This is not something that's always added on, but I just add it in there. You can definitely feel free to leave it blank. That's really not an issue. And really, the next thing here would be the protection period. So as far as the protection period, this is, for example, if you were to go into contract with them and they found a home that they really liked, and you sent them the home. Y'all want to look at it. They really liked. Then they said, "You know what, Jesse, I'm sorry. I want to cancel. I want to terminate. I don't want to go ahead and continue with you anymore." And then next thing you know, you see that they've purchased that house that you sent them. Maybe because the seller was like, "Hey, come purchase with me and we'll, kick out our realtors or you'll kick out your realtor and I'll give you a better deal." Well, if they do that, and they purchase within that 90-day period, you're entitled to your commission. That's really what it comes to play. Now, keep in mind, if they cancel with you and then they sign with the new realtor, this is means jack. It means squat. There's really nothing you can do. The 90 days is only it's only up to it where it ends, or if another agent comes in and if they sign with that new agent, that voids this 90 days. So just something to keep in mind. Typically, again, we write out 90 days because that's really enough time for if something like that were to happen, they'd be closing within that amount of time. Now, next thing really is the county. Amounts payable to broker are to be paid in Bexar County. This is always Bexar County. This is not where you're closing. So I've closed in Medina, I've closed in Atascosa County and different ones, but it's always being paid in Bexar County. So that's what you got to write in here or wherever you're at. So if you're, in a different county, and that's where your brokers settled in, and that's where everything goes through, you would write that county. But for us here, it's Bexar County. Mediation, again, of course, if something happens, the idea is to try to mediate instead of breaking contract. And again, default, because if either party, if you don't do your job as an agent, they can fire you. If they don't do their job as a client, you can fire them. I had a client, now this was on the listing side, where they refused. Long story short, it didn't make appraisal. I warned them it wouldn't make appraisal. The buyer's agent did a horrible job from the get-go, offering way more than they were supposed to. And they expected, the clients got all hyped up, and then when they found out they weren't going to get that much money, they got really upset and they no longer wanted to work, and they didn't want to come down to the appraised value, and they don't have to. So at that point, everything ended, and they wanted me to list it again really high at this new crazy value and to not provide the appraisal. And I was just like, I have to disclose that there was an appraisal and that this was the amount. You have to. And they refused. So they didn't want me to. And they said that if they want to, they were going to start complaining and so on. So I ended up breaking agreement with them, the listing, because there was a couple other things that they also didn't want me to disclose. Because also, if you get if you get an inspection report from the current buyer, you need to disclose that. So I went ahead and I did, I terminated because I didn't want that to happen. And so that's what it is. So again, default. Just make sure you're doing your jobs, guys, and you'll be fine. Attorney's fees, all that kind of stuff gets more to the legality of it. I mean, at the end of the day, it's a contract. If either party wants to sue for X amount of reason, you can. But I mean, if that really never happens, just do your job and you'll be fine. Addendum. So here, what I'm going to add is I added this general information notice to buyers and sellers. And then I always like to add a wire fraud warning here. Now, obviously, you also included we're going to include the disclosure notice in a bit, so you could add that too and so on. But at the end of the day, as long as you have those documents signed, you have proof that they received them. Now, you see a couple of these other forms, they're good to know, but typically I go by case by case. So protect your family from letting your home. If I know we're looking at a new property, I won't even bother sending this. Like, there's no point to it. If we find a property and it ends up being built obviously prior to 1978, then I'll go ahead and send them, info on this or the pamphlet, just because at that point then it is relevant. If it's not relevant, there's no need to send them extra paperwork. That's not needed. Special provisions. Don't forget, guys, whatever you're writing here, you're technically practicing law. But it's really not, again, in this case, it's more of just if there's any other agreement that you have between yourself and the buyer. So one of the things that you can write here, for example, let me write it out here, is buyer or agent can terminate at any time with written notice. With written notice without any fees or cancellation charges unless otherwise stated in written form. So again, buyer or agent can terminate at any time with written notice without any fees or cancellation charges unless otherwise stated in written form. So again, if they decided, this is just to make the client feel a little more secure that they can get out at any time. Again, you're not going to hold a client hostage. You don't want to, if they don't want to work with you, don't drag it out. All you're going to do is make them even angrier, and then what they're going to do is they're going to go and bash you to everyone they know, and even bash you online for everyone you know to see. So you got to be really careful for that. Just leave it on the terms. For example, that one client I terminated with, I didn't want to do it, but I left it on good terms, and he even reached out to me once or twice with the question after that. He ended up not selling for. I think he's still living there, but point is, he ended up not selling and just not doing anything, but he still reached out to me and we left on good terms. After this, really that's really just about it. I would go here, just fill out the license number. You click the date here. You can also do it when you sign, that you can place the dates, because for signatures, you're going to have another box up here with like the names of the people who are going to sign, and then it'll say like date, signatures, initials, and you would essentially drag down the boxes and stuff. And again, you're gonna see this a little later with the next video on how to use SkySlope and so on. Now, broker signature. This is not what you're going to click. You're going to click broker's associate signature, because again, we are broker's associates, not the broker signature, broker's associates. And then here you would write your name. Let me see here. And then next thing we would do here would be put the dates for the for theirs if you wanted to, and if not, like I said, once they sign, you can go ahead and edit at that time for the portion. So this is pretty much good to go. Being that it's your first time, I would say probably go up again and just see if there's anything else that you may have missed. At this point, everything looks good to me, so we're going to go ahead and hit back again. If you hit back, it automatically saves, so you don't have to click save every time, and it even sit right here. It gives you saved. And then from here, we're going to go to disclosure of relationship with service company. So again, this is the HOA. So, and here, look, it automatically pre-filled. That's why I like it doing it on here. And then I will go to, we do receive compensation for marketing from the company, and click here, America's Preferred Home Warranty. And for those wondering what this is, so this is essentially, we have to disclose any money that we receive, either ourselves or the broker, for any deal. So this is the brokerage just letting the client know, if we were to go in a contract and then we were to purchase a home service warranty, either on the seller or buyer, whatever side you're on. If you're on this listing side and the buyer ends up purchasing the home warranty under that name, or if you're on the buyer side and you choose it under that company, the company EXP does get some kind of money paid to them because they probably helped out with marketing or something. And so anytime EXP closes a deal with them, EXP should be getting paid maybe a small fee or portion of every sale that the home service warranty makes to them. So that's something that I would really, again, I hope that makes sense for the most part. If anyone has any questions on this, but this is really easy. It's a disclosure. Now, what I would do at the time where you're ready to go in a contract, what you're going to do is you're going to go in here, and then this part they have to fill out. But if you wanted to make it easier, if you already know the listing broker's name, the license number, the other agent, and then the two sellers or one seller, you would fill this portion out for them. But they would need to fill this portion out and sign, obviously. So that's the only thing. Now I'm going to go ahead and click back. And then I'm going to go ahead and touch base on the ABA disclosure. So as you can see here, when you upload something that's not from here, you cannot edit it on here. The only place you can edit it would be because ZipForms has its own area where you can also sign digitally. But typically, EXP, we go through SkySlope and what DigiSign. So here, as you can see, again, we can't edit it. We don't have those nice little yellow boxes. That's something to keep in mind. So this form itself, actually, once I go into SkySlope, I will just upload it there. And again, it'll prompt me to say, there's an area where I can write, where I can say I'm going to write out the property address. I can put the date, and then I can put my name, the signature, or excuse me, not my name, the client's name, excuse me, the signature, and then the other client's name and the signature. And then something to keep in mind, if you ever have more than two signers, I've had one where it was three. I would put two names and I would have one signature, two signature, print name, date, and date. As long as it's on there somewhere, it's not necessarily that it has to be on here or done a certain way. This is just so you don't forget it and you know that it has to be signed. And this just says, look, the company works with certain companies like Silverline Title. You know, for every insurance policy, the broker can get paid a certain amount of money per transaction, again, for working with them and having that kind of business, business arrangement. That's what this disclosure is. So if they ask, it doesn't affect them in any way. You aren't going to see the money on your end. This is just an arrangement the EXP has with the company. So if you wanted to work with them, EXP would be getting some money back for having brought them business. And that's pretty much it. Now, you can sign. So you see this e-sign, you can sign, or you can even go into a document here and click e-sign. You can do that. But it's one of those things where it's like, you know what, it's a little, I find DigiSign to be a little quicker and easier to use than ZipForms. And let's say you did decide to do that here. If you go to e-sign, let me see if it takes you. Here would be any signatures that you would have had signed before. In fact, let me take you back real quick to someone I know who I've had her sign on here once before, because I was just trying to get it done. Let me see here. Okay. So once you have stuff signed, you'll have these folders come out just like this that have been completed. And you can see progress of signatures. If you go to eSign, see whether they were signed, whether they weren't, and you can open it up. And it'll tell you who signed and who completed it and where it's stuck. If you ever see that it's not coming back and the client's like, oh, I signed, you can see if maybe there was a signature they missed and stuff. The same thing with SkySlope. We'll hit that on later. But once you have them all, you'll have it like this, where it says digitally signed. And as you can see, for example, let me go into this one of four. Let it open up. There we go. So I filled all of this out, and then she signed here. And at the very bottom, she signed here. So again, that's typically how that works. Fill this out, and then once you do, what you would go to next would be, you would go back to documents here into your folder, and I would save it as PDF. So you click here, and then you go, so I want to do all these documents, including this one, and then I would go to next, save to my device. Now you can save it as separate files, but I prefer to save to my device all in one, because that way it's easier just to upload a SkySlope one file versus having to go one by one by one by one by one. And then you would go to save. And then once you do this, it's going to click download. If you're doing a Mac, typically it'll go into your downloads folder, which is down here. That's what it'll typically do. And then from there, you would sign into SkySlope and upload documents there. I'm going to go ahead and end it here. I'm hoping this video helped you guys out a lot. And then if y'all have any other questions, just like I said, feel free to reach out. Go through the forms, guys. See if there's anything cool, if there's any other cool forms that y'all might see.
Those disclosures are really cool, guys, and they were created just for us, so why not use them? They're meant to limit liability. So just want to leave y'all with just one last piece of advice. I know they say fake it to make it, but I also like to add you got to learn it to earn it, because at the end of the day, it only take you so far, and in this business, we want to go as far as we can go. So y'all take care, and thank you so much.